K9. Courage suddenly broke formation during a routine prisoner transport, charging straight toward the van and refusing to let it move another inch. His handler tried everything to pull him back, but the dog wouldn't budge. It made no sense. Until they opened the doors and started counting the prisoners. So what did they find that sent the entire team into panic? First, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling us where in the world you're watching from. That being said, let's get into it. The morning mist clung to the asphalt of the county jail parking lot as officers prepared for what should have been a routine prisoner transport. The orange glow of dawn had barely broken over the horizon as Officer Matthews adjusted the specialized K9 vest on his partner, Courage, a 2-year-old German shepherd with intelligent amber eyes that missed nothing. "First big transport, boy," Matthews whispered, checking the vest's straps one final time. "Let's make it count." Matthews had been a K9 handler for only 3 months, the newest addition to the department's elite unit, and still working to prove himself. His palms were slick with sweat as he ran through the mental checklist his father had drilled into him during childhood. Growing up, the son of the region's most respected K9 trainer had its advantages, but it also meant expectations were impossibly high. The memory of his father's funeral still felt fresh. Just 4 months ago, cancer had taken the man who dedicated 30 years to building the department's K9 program from nothing. The weight of continuing that legacy pressed on Matthews' shoulders each morning he put on the uniform. "Officer Matthews," Lieutenant Davidson's sharp voice cut through his thoughts. "Transport briefing, now." Lieutenant Davidson was a 20-year veteran with a reputation for running operations with military precision. His square jaw and perpetually furrowed brow gave him the appearance of someone who hadn't smiled in decades. The lieutenant made no secret of his skepticism about Matthews' rapid placement in the K9 unit, a position many believed had come through his father's connections rather than merit. "Today's transport includes 8 high-risk inmates," Davidson announced to the assembled team, his voice carrying across the parking lot. 3 violent offenders, 2 former gang leaders, and 3 flight risks. Zero margin for error, people. The lieutenant's eyes lingered on Matthews and Courage. "This is not a training exercise, Officer Matthews. Keep that animal under control at all times." Matthews nodded stiffly. "Yes, sir." The transport convoy consisted of 3 vehicles, a lead patrol car with Lieutenant Davidson and his partner, the armored transport van containing the 8 prisoners secured in individual restraints, and the trailing vehicle, Matthews and Courage, responsible for providing additional security and response capability if needed. "Convoy formation is standard," Davidson continued. "No stops, no exceptions. Radio check every 15 minutes. Questions?" His gaze swept the assembled officers, daring anyone to speak. "Mount up." The heavy doors of the transport van slammed shut with finality as the last prisoner was secured inside. As Matthews guided Courage into the back seat of their patrol SUV, he felt the familiar knot of anxiety tightening in his chest. His father's voice echoed in his memory. "The most dangerous moment is the one where you think nothing can go wrong." Engines rumbled to life in sequence. The lead car rolled forward, followed by the transport van, its reinforced exterior gleaming dully in the early morning light. Matthews took a deep breath, put the vehicle in drive, and followed, completing the convoy as it moved through the secured gates and onto the road that would take them to the state penitentiary 60 miles north. The convoy moved smoothly from the urban sprawl toward the rural highway that would carry them north. The morning traffic was light, the road still damp from overnight rain. Matthews settled into the rhythm of the drive, maintaining precisely 3 car lengths between his vehicle and the transport van ahead. "Radio check. All units." Lieutenant Davidson's voice crackled through the radio at the 15-minute mark. "Transport secure. All prisoners accounted for," responded the van team. "Tail position secure," Matthews confirmed, glancing at Courage, who sat alert but relaxed in his specially designed rear compartment. The routine check complete, Matthews allowed himself to exhale. The highway stretched before them, empty except for the occasional long-haul truck. They'd passed the county line and were now on the most isolated stretch of the journey, 20 miles of nothing but farmland and forest. 17 minutes into the drive, everything changed. Courage's demeanor transformed in an instant. His ears shot forward, body stiffening as though electrified. Matthews caught the change in his rearview mirror just before the first bark. Sharp, urgent, nothing like the dog's typical alert sound. Courage. Quiet, Matthews commanded, confusion creeping into his voice. There were no vehicles approaching, no obvious threats on the horizon. The dog ignored him completely, something he'd never done during operations. The barking intensified. Courage now standing in his compartment, lunging toward the front of their vehicle. Eyes locked on the transport van ahead. The radio crackled to life. "Tail position! What the hell is going on back there?" Lieutenant Davidson demanded, irritation evident in every syllable. "Sir, my K9 is alerting to something. I'm trying to determine—" "Control your animal, Officer Matthews," and Davidson cut him off. "That racket is unprofessional and distracting." "Yes, sir. Working on it." Matthews felt heat rising in his cheeks. "Courage, down! Quiet!" The dog responded by barking more frantically, now throwing his weight against the compartment barrier, still focused intently on the transport van. "Matthews, I swear to God, if you can't silence that mutt—" Davidson's threat was clear. From the transport van radio, Matthews could hear the prisoners beginning to react to the commotion, their voices rising in the background. "What's with the dog?" one of the guards asked. "Officer Matthews can't control his pet," Davidson replied scathingly. "Maintain course and speed." Sweat beaded on Matthews' forehead as he wrestled with his options. Every training protocol said to maintain convoy integrity. Stopping now, in this exposed area, based solely on a K9's unexplained behavior, would violate every procedure in the manual. "Maybe he needs a bathroom break," offered another officer over the radio, chuckling. "Or he saw a squirrel," added someone else. Matthews felt the weight of judgment from his colleagues, imagining their eye rolls and head shakes. Courage's barking had taken on a desperate quality he'd never heard before, not during training exercises, not during building searches, not even during the one live pursuit they'd engaged in last month. His father's voice surfaced in his memory, words spoken from a hospital bed just days before he passed. "A dog doesn't need to understand the danger to know it's there. When your partner tells you something's wrong, you listen, even when everyone else thinks you're crazy." Courage was now frantically shifting his attention between Matthews and the van, as if begging his human partner to understand. The dog's behavior wasn't random excitement or poor training. This was something else entirely. "Last warning, Matthews," Davidson's voice was cold as ice. "Control. Your dog." Despite the mounting pressure, Matthews couldn't shake the certainty growing in his gut. Something about Courage's behavior was different, more specific, more urgent than anything he'd witnessed in their time together. His father had always said that the difference between a good handler and a great one was knowing when to trust the dog over protocol. Matthews watched Courage's desperate attempts to communicate, their eyes meeting briefly in the mirror. In that moment, he knew this wasn't about training failure or animal unpredictability. This was Courage trying to save lives. Matthew's hand moved to the brake pedal before his conscious mind had fully committed to the decision. With one decisive motion, he slammed his foot down, tires squealing against wet asphalt as the SUV lurched to an abrupt halt. Through the windshield, he watched the distance between his vehicle and the transport van rapidly increase. "All units, tail position has stopped. Repeat, tail position has stopped." The vanguard's voice crackled with alarm over the radio. Matthews grabbed the radio. "Convoy halt! Courage is alerting to the transport van. Something's wrong." Ahead, brake lights flared as the transport van and lead car responded to the disruption in formation, pulling onto the shoulder with far more control than Matthews had managed. His heart hammered against his ribs as dust and road grit settled around his suddenly stationary vehicle. The radio exploded with Lieutenant Davidson's fury. "Matthews, what the hell do you think you're doing? Resume position immediately." "Sir, request immediate inspection of the transport van. My K9 is alerting to something specific." You've stopped a high-security convoy on an open highway because your dog is barking? Davidson's voice dropped to a dangerous quiet. Resume. Position. Now! Through the settling dust cloud, Matthews saw the lieutenant's car door fling open. Davidson emerged, face flushed crimson even from this distance, striding back toward Matthews' vehicle with the determined gait of someone about to end a career. Courage continued barking, still focused entirely on the transport van. Matthews exited his vehicle, standing his ground as Davidson approached. The lieutenant's eyes were narrow slits of controlled rage, his hand resting pointedly on his service weapon. Officer Matthews, Davidson's voice was razor sharp. You have exactly 5 seconds to explain why you've compromised this entire operation before I place you under arrest for insubordination. Matthews straightened his spine, forcing his voice to remain steady. Sir, Courage is trained to detect threats. He's alerting specifically to that transport van in a way I've never seen before. You've been a canine handler for, 12 weeks? And suddenly you're the expert on canine behavior? Davidson's sarcasm cut through the morning air. My father trained me my entire life, sir, Matthews replied, surprised by the steadiness in his voice. And he always said that when a dog like Courage acts this way, something is very wrong. Your father is dead, officer, Davidson said flatly, and your career is about to join him if you don't get back in that vehicle. The cruel words landed like physical blows, but instead of backing down, Matthews found his resolve hardening. Sir, what's the harm in checking? If I'm wrong, I'll submit my resignation immediately. Oh, you'll be doing that regardless, Davidson shot back. From the transport van, one of the guards called out, Lieutenant, what's the situation? Davidson turned away from Matthews, shouting back, Nothing, just an inexperienced handler who can't control his animal. Matthews took advantage of the lieutenant's momentary distraction to open his rear door. Courage leapt out immediately, making a beeline for the transport van, his barking now even more frantic. Courage, heel! Matthews called, but the dog was locked in mission mode, stopping directly in front of the transport van's rear doors, his posture rigid with alertness. Several of the other officers had exited their vehicles now, watching the drama unfold with expressions ranging from embarrassment to curiosity. The transport guards stood nervously by the van, hands on their weapons, uncertain how to proceed. Get that dog away from my transport, Davidson ordered, advancing toward Matthews again. You've just thrown away your career. You realize that? Matthews swallowed hard, acutely aware of the professional suicide he was committing. Yet something beyond logic propelled him forward, the absolute certainty in Courage's behavior, the echo of his father's wisdom, and the growing conviction that something was genuinely wrong. Sir, he said quietly, I believe there's an imminent threat to this transport. If I'm wrong, I'll accept all consequences. But please, check the van. Davidson stared at him for a long moment, jaw working with suppressed fury. Finally, he turned to the transport guards. Fine, open it up. Let's prove once and for all what happens when daddy's connections get you a job you're not qualified for. The transport guards exchanged uncertain glances as Lieutenant Davidson approached. Sir, this is against protocol. We're not supposed to open the transport doors outside a secure facility. I'm aware of the protocol, Officer Jenkins. I wrote half of it, Davidson snapped. But apparently we need to indulge Officer Matthews' pet project before we can continue with our actual jobs. Matthews kept his expression neutral despite the barb, focusing instead on Courage, who had positioned himself squarely in front of the van's rear doors. The dog's attention was laser-focused, ears forward, body quivering with tension. Officer Jenkins inserted his key into the exterior lock, while his partner, Officer Reyes, drew his weapon and stood ready. Stand back from the doors, prisoners! Hands visible! The heavy metal door swung open with a hydraulic hiss. Inside, the dim interior revealed 2 rows of prisoners secured to their seats with both handcuffs and ankle restraints, each connected to the floor with additional chain systems. The standard transport configuration was designed to make movement nearly impossible. Count off, Jenkins ordered, standing at the threshold. Lieutenant Davidson pushed past him. I'll handle this. He entered the van, face set in grim determination. Let's make this quick. Matthews remained outside with Courage, whose barking had suddenly ceased. replaced by focused attention. The dog's eyes tracked something specific within the van, his body language shifting from alert to targeting posture, the stance he took when honing in on a specific threat. Inside, Davidson began the prisoner count, moving methodically down the center aisle. 1! Here, responded the first prisoner, a heavily tattooed man who lifted his cuffed hands. 2! Another prisoner acknowledged with a nod and raised hands. The count continued without incident until Davidson reached the sixth prisoner, situated near the rear of the van where shadows were deepest. The overhead light had burned out, leaving the area particularly dim. 6, Davidson called. Present and accounted for, responded a calm voice from the shadows. The prisoner shifted slightly, the chains around his ankles clinking against the metal floor. Matthews noticed Courage's posture change instantly. The dog's muscles bunched, a low growl replacing his earlier barks. Something about that specific prisoner had triggered an even more intense response. Sir, Matthews called, suddenly urgent, Courage is alerting to prisoner 6. Davidson turned with an exasperated sigh. Officer Matthews, I swear to... His words cut off abruptly as his eyes caught something unusual. The lieutenant leaned closer, examining the restraints on prisoner 6. Your cuffs are loose, Davidson said, voice suddenly professional. How did that happen, inmate? The prisoner, a muscular man with close-cropped hair and cold, calculating eyes, smiled slowly. Just got lucky, I guess. Matthews saw it happen in slow motion. As Davidson reached for his radio to report the security breach, the prisoner's posture shifted with snake-like speed. His apparently secured hands shot forward, one grabbing Davidson's weapon, while the other clamped around the lieutenant's throat. Nobody move! The prisoner shouted, dragging Davidson backward in the narrow confines of the transport van. Back away from the door, or the lieutenant gets ventilated. The other prisoners began shouting, some cheering, others cursing in surprise. Officers Jenkins and Reyes immediately drew their weapons, but the enclosed space and Davidson's position as a human shield made any shot impossible. Donner, stand down, Jenkins yelled, recognizing the prisoner. Matthews' training kicked in automatically. He pulled Courage back from the van doors, creating space while assessing the rapidly deteriorating situation. His mind raced to recall details about prisoner 6, Ray Donner, former military serving multiple life sentences for armed robbery and murder, a 3-time escape artist who had once killed 2 guards during a previous transport. I want every officer to back up 20 feet from this van, Donner called out, pressing the barrel of Davidson's service weapon against the lieutenant's temple. Do it now, or watch your boss die on dash cam. The other officers began retreating slowly, weapons still drawn. Matthews moved with them, keeping Courage close, his mind racing through tactical options. Davidson's eyes locked with Matthews. Briefly through the van door, not filled with anger now, but with the clear focus of a veteran officer in crisis. A nearly imperceptible nod passed between them, professional acknowledgement replacing their earlier conflict. The highway had transformed from a routine transport route into a tactical nightmare. Officers scrambled for cover behind vehicles while maintaining weapon sights on the transport van. Inside, Ray Donner had maneuvered Lieutenant Davidson to the van's open doorway, using him as both shield and bargaining chip. Here's how this works, Donner called out, his voice carrying the calm confidence of someone who had planned for this moment. I want the keys to the lead car, a clear path out of here, and no pursuit for 30 minutes. Simple. Officer Jenkins had taken tactical command, coordinating the response team's positions via hushed radio communications. Dispatch, we have a code 10-24, hostage situation involving Lieutenant Davidson, requesting immediate backup and tactical team deployment to Highway 16, mile marker 37. Matthews kept Courage close, one hand firmly on his harness, as they took cover behind his patrol SUV. The dog had gone eerily quiet, his posture vigilant but calm, a transition from alerting to operational mode. Together they watched Donner's movements, analyzing the developing situation. You, Donner called out, looking directly at Matthews. K-9 officer, step forward where I can see you. Alone. Matthews exchanged glances with Jenkins, who gave a reluctant nod. Moving slowly, Matthews stepped into the open, stopping 15 feet from the van. That's far enough, Donner said. Your dog sensed something was wrong, didn't he? Smart animal. Smarter than most people give him credit for, Matthews replied evenly, assessing the hostage situation with trained eyes. Davidson was conscious, his expression controlled despite the gun pressed to his head. Well, Officer Matthews, you and your dog just complicated what should have been a perfect escape. I had this timed down to the second, Donner said, with professional assessment. My associates are waiting at the county line. Would have been clean if you hadn't stopped the convoy. There are accomplices waiting? Matthews asked, realizing Donner was revealing information intentionally. Highway maintenance crew that doesn't exist, Donner confirmed with a small smile. They're probably wondering what's taking so long. Dispatch's voice crackled over the radio. All units, backup is 12 minutes out, tactical team ETA 17 minutes. Donner laughed. Too late. Now, Officer Matthews, since your dog is the reason for this little detour, you're going to help me. Get those keys, bring them here. Nice and slow. Matthews nodded, turning toward the lead car where the keys would be. As he moved, he caught sight of Courage positioned at the edge of his SUV, partially hidden from Donner's view. An idea began forming. The rest of you, Donner called to the other officers, put your weapons down and kick them away. I know police protocol. Lieutenant's life comes first, right? He tightened his grip on Davidson, causing the lieutenant to wince. Reluctantly, the transport guards placed their weapons on the ground. Matthews returned with the keys, stopping at the designated distance. Toss them here, Donner ordered. Matthews complied, throwing the keys to land just beyond the van's step. Donner would need to move forward slightly to retrieve them, a calculated placement. Now, where's that dog of yours? Donner asked, eyes scanning the area. I secured him in my vehicle, Matthews lied smoothly. He's trained to attack armed suspects. Wouldn't want him misinterpreting the situation. Smart move. Donner nodded approvingly. A K-9 would complicate things. Matthews maintained eye contact with Donner, careful not to glance toward where Courage was actually positioned. What happens to the lieutenant once you have the car? That depends on how smoothly the next few minutes go, Donner replied. I don't want to hurt anyone, but I'm not going back to a cell. 18 years inside is enough. While maintaining conversation, Matthews was conducting a silent assessment. The lieutenant's position, Donner's grip on the weapon, the distance to cover, all factors in the rapidly forming plan. Most importantly, he noted that Donner's attention was divided between the officers, the keys just out of reach, and planning his next move. You were military, Matthews observed, continuing to engage Donner, while subtly shifting his own position. Special forces, right? 2 tours with Army Rangers before I found more profitable work, Donner confirmed, a hint of pride in his voice. Which is why I know exactly what you're all thinking. The tactical approaches, the response times, the protocol. I know it better than most of you. Davidson's eyes met Matthews briefly. The lieutenant had caught on to the stalling tactic. Despite their earlier confrontation, a moment of professional understanding passed between them. I need water, Davidson spoke suddenly, his voice raspy. Can't breathe right with this arm around my throat. Sir, we have water here, Matthews offered, gesturing toward his patrol vehicle. It would show good faith to allow basic humanitarian needs. Fine, Donner snapped after a moment's consideration. Get it, slowly. Matthews moved deliberately toward his vehicle, using the action to assess sightlines and finalize his plan. When he returned with the water bottle, he positioned himself at precisely the angle he needed, one that would force Donner to turn slightly away from where Courage was hidden, to maintain both his hostage and visual contact with Matthews. Here, Matthews said, placing the bottle down near the keys. The positioning was deliberate. Donner would need to look down to grab both items when the time came, momentarily dividing his attention. Pathetic efforts at manipulation, Donner commented, shaking his head. This is why most cops lose in hostage scenarios. You're all thinking by the manual. Speaking of manuals, Matthews replied, slowly shifting his weight to signal Courage. Did yours cover what to do when you can't see the K-9? For the first time, uncertainty flashed across Donner's face. His eyes darted around the visible area, searching for the dog he'd been told was secured in the vehicle. What are you talking about? Courage isn't in the car, Matthews said calmly, his hand moving to the specific position that would signal immediate attack. He never was. Donner's expression shifted from confidence to alarm as he realized the trap closing around him. His eyes swept the area frantically, searching for the dog he'd dismissed as irrelevant. "You're bluffing," he said, tightening his grip on Davidson while adjusting his position to scan beneath vehicles. "The dog ran off. I would have seen it." "The keys," Donner said suddenly, gesturing with the gun toward the ground. "Pick them up and hand them to me, now!" "Of course," Matthews replied, moving forward slowly as if to comply. As he bent toward the keys, Matthews made the decision. His right hand dropped to his side, fingers snapping once. A sharp, barely audible sound that would mean nothing to human ears, but carried specific meaning to his partner. From beneath the transport van, Courage emerged like a phantom. No barking, no warning growl, just 70 pounds of precision-trained muscle launching in complete silence. In the millisecond before impact, Donner finally spotted the movement in his peripheral vision, but it was already too late. Courage hit his target with textbook perfection, jaws clamping around Donner's gun arm with enough force to compress but not crush, the specialized bite designed to neutralize without permanent damage. The prisoner screamed in surprise and pain as the German Shepherd's momentum knocked his arm upward, the weapon discharging harmlessly into the air. Lieutenant Davidson reacted instantly, driving his elbow back into Donner's solar plexus while dropping his weight forward, breaking the hold around his neck. The lieutenant rolled clear as Matthews closed the distance in 3 rapid strides. Donner struggled desperately against Courage's grip, but the dog maintained position, applying consistent pressure that rendered the arm immobile without severing arteries or crushing bone. The gun clattered to the pavement as Matthews delivered a precise strike to Donner's shoulder, further compromising his balance. "Face down, other arm behind your back," Matthews instructed calmly. "Slowly." When Donner complied, Matthews gave the release command. "Courage, out." The German Shepherd immediately released his grip, backing up 3 steps while maintaining focus on the prisoner, ready to re-engage if necessary. Matthews moved in swiftly, securing Donner's wrists with reinforced restraints, while 2 other officers provided cover. "Clear," Matthews announced once the cuffs were double-locked. The team moved with coordinated precision, fully securing Donner with additional restraints while treating his injured arm. Blood stained his sleeve where Courage's teeth had penetrated, but the wound was controlled, exactly as the dog had been trained to deliver. Lieutenant Davidson approached, rubbing his throat where Donner's arm had compressed it. For a moment, he simply observed the prisoner being secured, then turned to Matthews with an expression the younger officer couldn't quite read. "Search him thoroughly," Davidson ordered the team. He had tools to escape the first restraints. "Make sure there's nothing else." Officer Jenkins conducted the search, eventually extracting a small metal implement from Donner's boot. "Got it. Looks like a modified lockpick." "Check the other prisoners, too," Davidson added. "This may have been coordinated." While the team secured the scene, Matthews knelt beside Courage, checking him over for any injuries sustained during the takedown. The German Shepherd stood perfectly composed, his mission complete, waiting for the next command with unwavering focus. "Good boy," Matthews whispered, allowing himself a moment of connection with his partner. "Perfect execution." Courage responded with a brief tail wag, the only break in his professional demeanor. Davidson approached them, his earlier anger replaced by something Matthews couldn't quite identify. "Your dog did good work," the lieutenant said simply. "Clean takedown." "Thank you, sir," Matthews replied, standing to face his superior. "Dispatch reports they've intercepted 2 suspects in a false maintenance vehicle at the county line," Davidson continued. "Apparently Donner's accomplices were waiting exactly where he said they would be." "If your dog hadn't alerted when he did," Davidson said, watching the scene unfold, "this could have ended very differently. Donner would have reached his accomplices and he left the potential outcomes unspoken." The convoy resumed its journey 40 minutes later, reinforced with additional security vehicles and a tactical team escort. In the lead car, Lieutenant Davidson insisted Matthews and Courage ride with him, leaving another officer to drive Matthews's vehicle. The three traveled in silence for the first several miles, the morning's events settling over them like a heavy blanket. You risked your career today, Davidson finally said, eyes fixed on the road ahead. Stopping the convoy, contradicting a superior officer, creating a potential security breach, all based on your dog's behavior. Matthews tensed, preparing for the disciplinary speech he'd been expecting. Yes, sir. In 22 years with this department, I've seen officers make calls based on hunches, evidence, experience, but never solely on a canine's unexplained alert. Davidson glanced in the rearview mirror at Courage, who sat alert in the back seat. Most handlers would have overridden their dog's behavior, especially with a superior officer demanding it. My father always said that questioning your dog's instincts in a critical moment could be the difference between life and death, Matthews replied. I couldn't ignore what Courage was telling me. Davidson nodded slowly. Your father was one of the most stubborn men I ever worked with. Drove me crazy with his unorthodox training methods and constant challenges to standard protocol. A hint of something like respect softened his voice. But his canines had the highest success rate in the state. I never understood how. He believed in building true partnerships, not just handler-dog relationships, Matthews explained. He said most departments train dogs to be tools, but they should be trained as thinking team members. Today proved his point, Davidson conceded, rubbing his neck where Donner's arm had compressed his throat. If you and Courage hadn't been there, this transport would have gone very differently. People would have died, myself included, most likely. 1 week later, Matthews stood at attention in the department's briefing room. The chief of police stepped forward, addressing the assembled officers. Today, we recognize exceptional service that prevented what could have been a tragedy, the chief began. Lieutenant Davidson has submitted a detailed report recommending commendation for Officer Matthews and his canine partner Courage, whose actions directly prevented a coordinated escape attempt and potentially saved multiple lives. Davidson approached, holding a department commendation pin. The gesture carried special significance coming from an officer who had been ready to end Matthews' career just days earlier. Your quick thinking and willingness to trust your partner's instincts demonstrated the highest standards of this department, Davidson said formally, attaching the pin to Matthews' uniform, even when that meant standing up to a superior officer who was wrong. The last words were spoken quietly, meant only for Matthews to hear. After the ceremony concluded, Matthews drove to the hilltop cemetery where his father was buried. Courage accompanied him, sitting patiently as Matthews knelt beside the simple headstone. You were right, Dad, he said quietly, placing the commendation pin against the cold granite, about trusting your partner over protocol, about Courage being special, about all of it. Courage moved closer, resting his head against Matthew's arm as if understanding the moment's significance. Lieutenant Davidson said to tell you that you're still a pain in his ass, even from the grave, Matthews added with a small smile. But he also said your training methods were right all along. He's implementing them department-wide next month. The setting sun cast long shadows across the cemetery as Matthews stood to leave. He felt a sense of completion, of promises kept and lessons honored. His father's legacy would continue through the unique bond he shared with Courage, a partnership based on mutual trust that had already proven its worth in the most demanding circumstances. Come on, boy, Matthews said, his voice steady and confident as they walked back to the patrol car together. We've got work to do. Have you ever witnessed an animal sense danger before humans could detect it? Animals possess incredible instincts that often surpass our own, allowing them to perceive threats we might miss completely. What would you have done in Officer Matthews' position? Trust your dog's instincts, even if it meant risking your career. Would you trust your pet's behavior over logic and authority? Share your experiences in the comments below. If today's story touched you, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss our daily uploads of extraordinary canine tales. Our four-legged heroes deserve recognition for the incredible work they do alongside their human partners. Share this video with the dog lovers in your life who understand that sometimes animals know better than we do. Check out our previous K9 hero stories appearing on your screen right now, including our popular video about the search dog who found a missing child in a blizzard when all human efforts had failed. We'll see you tomorrow, same time, with another brand new video.